right, a very good morning to you. It's good to see you on this first day of February. And of course, it is the month of love. So I hope you're excited, for the month ahead of you. It's so good to see you this morning. Happy new month. And I hope that you're doing very well. This is Your World. Welcome to the show. My name is Winnie Lubembe. So much to cover. And of course, today it's all about data protection, and a conversation around data protection or the protection of personal data has been a hot topic of conversation both in Kenya and internationally. But the question that lingers is, have you ever wondered, first of all, where your data is stored, how it is used, and who has access to them, and just how valuable is data and why must it be protected? Well, we unpack all that in today's conversation, so you want to stick around. I know there's so many questions surrounding data protection, who has access. Majority of us usually ask, but I did not consent to the same. Is that a factor? Is that something that we need to think about as well? Again, like I said, stick around until the end of the conversation. We have, the perfect panel to help us have a conversation around this. And of course, without further ado, we have Madam Immaculate Kasait, who is the Data Commissioner. It's so good to have you this morning. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Winnie, and thank you for having me.
Karibuni sana. And of course, we also have Linda Bonyo, who is the CEO, Lawyers Hub. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thanks.
Listen, there was something going on. We did not get the memo. What happened? And of course, last but not least, we have John Malubengo, who is an ICT lecturer at Multimedia University. So good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
You and I did not get the memo. I got like half of it. But asante sana for making time for us this morning. Kenyans have a lot of questions for you. But before that, let's just establish base and get to understand what exactly does data mean. So, and of course, we'll start with the Data Protection Act, and this is of 2019. And according to the same, data actually means, literally, it is information which, A, it is processed by means of equipment operating automatically in response to instructions given for that purpose. B, it is recorded with intention that it should be processed by means of such equipment. And C, is recorded as part of a relevant filing system. All right. And of course, still continues to say, it is information which, where it does not fall under paragraphs A, B, or C, it forms part of an accessible record, or is recorded information which is held by a public entity and does not fall within any paragraphs A to D. Listen, this is let's just first of all unpack that before we talk about the rights, of a data subject, and of course the whole question about objecting to processing. So, Madam Kasait, let's just start from there. Help us understand that, because it's a lot, from A to B, C, and then A all the way to E. Help us really unpack that and make it as simple as possible for people to understand.
Thank you, Winnie, and my fellow panelists, Walu and Linda.
Yeah.
To just break it down, that's a lot.
Yes.
When you start now describing what is data, it's going to be very hard for anyone to conceptualize.
Yes, it's a bit complicated. Yeah.
If we were to draw a line and think about yourself, what data is this we are talking about? Because the data could be, that definition of data talks about a lot of information.
That's true.
However, of particular importance for the office is personal data. And when you draw a line, what is personal data? On one hand, you will see your name, your address, your address, your children's identity, your property, your finances. I mean, everything that can identify you as Winnie. So that is what it is that we are supposed as an office to make sure that it's safeguarded.
Okay.
Yes,
All right. Personal data. And why is it, very important? Mr. Olubengo, if you can help us understand that. Why is data so important?
Well, people say data is the new gold or the new oil. And it has been for actually
A long time.
the last many years.
Yeah.
It's just now that most of us in this region are coming to appreciate that. Data is important because it has an economic value. If you think about a simple application like Uber or online taxis,
Okay.
how do they get to know where you are vis-a-vis where the driver is, and then they connect the two of you to provide a service?
Okay.
They use data.
Data, yeah.
Data in most cases that is very personal, like where you live. If you order an online taxi from your home, you tend to appreciate the ride without realizing that the app at the back end has very detailed data about you.
Okay.
Where you live, your name, your picture, and among others. So you get to your office, but you don't know what they're doing with that data.
That's true.
Over and above giving you a ride, they have access to a whole history of your data, and
And your
her
movements
office
as
is
well,
necessary
yes.
to ensure that those people
Yeah.
who are collecting your data don't abuse it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But sometimes we have seen abuse
Yes.
of the same. And of course, we will have a lot of conversations surrounding the same. I'm pretty sure almost all of us have received, you know, that text from watu wanasema watu wa kamiti. Telling, mom, calculator yangu imeharibika, send, you know, money to
my-
this number and all
yes,
those things.
yes.
How do they get that information? Of course, you know, Madam Kasait will help us with the same. There's the whole question about privacy. How much should I share and how much should I not share in terms of just keeping some things, you know, private to myself? So how much of this information that is out there about me, for example, how much of a threat can it be?
There's an interesting story about, I can't remember his name, there was this influencer who went on a Twitter spat with the environmentalist, the climate change activist, I think she's called Rita. And when he did the video, I think he did the video in Europe, and he just ordered pizza.
Yeah.
So the police were looking for him. So he did this video, and there was a pizza on a pizza box on his desk. And that's what the police used to actually trace which country he was in and get him.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we think it's just a little detail on this video, but somebody can actually pinpoint and say, this only happens in Kenya, and this happens in Naivasha.
Yeah.
And then they can narrow down and find where you are. There's been, you know, they're like, when you talk about privacy and how much to share, I think that that's on a person. Like, there are people who make money from sharing, and we have social media influencers who we know their houses, we know their husbands, we know where they work. And sometimes, like I remember during COVID, you'd see maybe an influencer going live and the husband works for maybe a law firm and he's working from home and he's on the other side. And so it's really pretty easy to zoom in and see, look at his laptop, what is he working on? So I think that people need to know exactly where they are at, like what profession they have. And then also look at, in terms of consent, like sometimes people post children, is it necessary? But the more you share out there, it's data that's used to identify you. Like for example, when I go on Instagram and start posting or researching about, let's say, family planning, I all of a sudden start getting a lot of adverts on the same, or maybe even on my mic, because most of the apps you give them access to your microphone, and so they really listen into some conversations and they know that you're talking about, you know, flowers, and so they keep now bombarding you with Valentine's flowers and chocolate.
Listen, sometimes you don't even have to say nothing. You just think about it, and then you go online and you see all those things. And you're like, is someone monitoring my mind? You know, and all those things. And that is where, again, the biggest concern is, Madam Kasait, in terms of, so are there instances where, because like you said, it's personal, you decide how much you want to give, but are there instances where you absolutely have no control in terms of how much you give, because you're obligated to give that data, or you're needed, you know, to give that information. So I can't decide it. So I'm just giving you up until this point. The rest, it is for me. And how much, again, of a threat is that?
Let me just say, in terms of data protection, just to reiterate what Walubengo has said about commercial value of data. Reiterate what Linda has said in terms of when you share information, you're basically leaving what we call a footprint online. But can you say you're not going to share information at all? No. That means it's an impossibility. Because under the Data Protection Act, one of the things that the office is tasked is to make sure that when people collect your information, they collect it and follow certain principles. And now that is where we now begin to define the framework of why you're collecting people's information. For instance, there must be a lawful basis. Why are you collecting the information? It must be transparent. And transparency, it's about then telling the person you're collecting information why you're collecting the information. Which results in what we call a privacy notice. You're telling people, we are collecting your information, we'll use it for this purpose, this is how we'll store it, that is how it will dispose it. It's a key principle. so that even if you are expected to share information, I must know where it is too. The other one is purpose limitation. When
Okay.
you collect my limitation, when you collect my information, it's limited to a specific purpose.
All right.
If, like what Walu has, or Lubengo has said about Uber apps, they collect your information specifically to get you from point A to point B. They can't then use that information for commercial purposes. Like, for instance, SMSs you're saying, because there was a limitation in terms of why they were collecting that information.
All right.
The same for a hospital. The same for a building. They collect it for a limited purpose. The third one is data minimization. They are expected to limit. Even as Uber, when they collect, or any app, let me say
Yeah, let's
that.
just say on.
Oh, any app. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Any app, when they collect your information, they should then, when it comes to data minimization, they shouldn't ask specific. For instance, if it was an insurance company, why would they be asking information about your marital status and you're insuring a car? That is data minimization.
Okay.
Only collect certain, and then accuracy. It has to be accurate, it has to be about me, and then the issue around security. When it comes to security, which who is an expert in that area, the basic principle is that we collect information, we make you trust us, and we must make sure it's secure. That is really the principle around data security.
Yeah.
So those are the principles that are expected that you follow. Because everyone collecting information may have, and that is another conversation that we need to have, there are certain purposes that people collect information.
Sure.
They could have what we call a legal obligation. For instance, a government institution will collect your information for as a result of a legal obligation is expected of them. There could be a contract. For instance, what as an employee of this company, they will expect you to give them certain information for purpose, as because you're an employee, or if you're going ahead with a contract, legitimate interest, which is in this case a customer, or consent. At times, if it's for commercial use, you need to seek your consent. Can I send you an SMS? Can I opt out? And also vital interest. Maybe in some cases it's about your life. Your life is threatened, so those people have to make decision in terms of your vital interest, and of course, purpose for legal performance. So that's the reason why people collect information.
Right.
For us, is to make sure they follow those principles when they collect your information.
Okay, but then the question is, who has the right to ask for your information, right? And are there instances where we give information without necessarily knowing that we're actually giving out information that we shouldn't be given? Do you want to tackle that?
Yes, thank you. Immaculate has actually covered most of the data protection principle, but just to add on what she listed, there's the other principle of retention or storage. Once you collect my data, it doesn't mean you stay with it forever.
Okay.
For example, if I delete my online app for online taxi, you realize that my personal data may still be with that taxi.
Yes.
I moved from them, I've gone to another one, but I've left my home address with them. Should they retain it, and for how long? She also forgot to mention her office, accountability, the principle of accountability.
We'll come to her on accountability. Yes.
So the data protection commissioner is actually there to help Wanjiku, because you rightly noted, there's sometimes very little choice Wanjiku has in some of these power arrangements. So her office will ensure that whoever is collecting that data is able to do so within the prescribed principles that she has outlined. And that's where we get protection.
Okay.
Because sometimes whoever is collecting has a bigger power play compared to us. So the only thing we can do is that once they have collected data about us, then we expect that they follow the principles outlined in order to secure and safeguard our data.
All right. So we know for like government institutions, for example, yes, they might require, your data, here and there for a number of reasons. But again, I like what, again, Immaculate talked about. There has to be a reason why they're
Yeah.
collecting this data, because sometimes you go to places and they don't tell you why they need your information. They tell you need to give us information, and
Yeah.
majority of the people will not ask why. Why are you getting
Yeah.
this information? We just think, I mean, it's in the protocol. Just give the information, whatever it is that they need, and then you go about your business, not knowing what exactly is going to happen
Yeah.
to the information that you're giving.
Just to add on that, there's the principle of transparency. So it's obligated that the data controllers or whoever is collecting data about it to be transparent
Okay.
about their practices.
Okay.
For example, when you log on to their website, they, through technology, they're able to know your location.
Okay.
Even though you as a user logging into the website is not aware. So it's incumbent on them to alert me that as you hit my website, this and this and that is what I'm collecting about.
Okay. Yeah.
And then now you can make up a decision whether you
Whether
still
you want
want
to continue or not.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then, so should this be, I know it's sort of like a gap that then needs to be strengthened, because like I said, majority of the people don't know that, this is up to, there's a limitation to what or to how much information they can access, because there's some that will tell you they have access to your contacts, they have access to your SMS, they have access to, all those things. And we just give them because, again, we don't know when it comes to limitation. Immaculate talked about, of course, the principles of data collection, right, and all that. But then again, the legal principles of the same. Can we briefly talk about them? Because I know we need to go on a break right now.
Okay, I was just going to talk about two things: legitimacy, and I think it's important to know whether this is a legitimate request and a legitimate point of data collection.
Okay. Because
sometimes I think even at work, sometimes employees would resist and say, "I don't want to talk about my next of kin," but that's important. And we've had instances where, sometimes people don't understand these principles as we talk about public knowledge.
Yeah.
And I think even from the consent is to really understand the three terms that are commonly used. The data subject, you're the one whose data is being collected.
Yeah.
Then we have a data controller, the one who's in charge and says, collect this data. And then we have the processor who processes this data.
Okay.
And so sometimes there's a third-party processor. So for example, if you're booking a flight on JumboJet and you're using another application, for example, maybe through an influencer, or an influencer runs the KCB Twitter account or something. So that's another person who's running this your data other than the controller himself.
Okay.
So when you know that I'm a data subject and I actually need access to this data, then now you know your rights as a data subject. You have rights to data portability. You can move from one app to another and ask them, can I have my data on machine readable format? So then you can move from, let's say, let me give an example of dating apps. You can move from Tinder to Hinge to Bumble to whatever it is there.
All right.
I see the smile on your face.
Okay, yes, I'm like, we're not throwing out names right here. Okay.
Yeah, but you can move if you want to move from Uber and you want to go to Bolt, you can move on these platforms.
Yeah.
So I think to really understand also the principle of cross-sharing, because sometimes people do cross-platform sharing without your consent.
Yeah.
So for example, there's an Uber driver who gave me a ride, and then they called me and said, I've seen on your status on WhatsApp that this is, I'm like, how did you save my number? I only wanted to be on the platform.
Yeah.
And so we started doing a study on ride-hailing apps at the Lawyers Hub and privacy practices. It's still ongoing and there's a survey out. But one of the things we found out is some apps actually give access to your number to the driver even way after you end the ride. And so they can go to your to their recent whatever's up to a week ago, and then still call you and say, you know what, I need a job. And so I have a friend of mine who's a journalist, and somebody called them and said, I really need a job. And they're like, who are you? And like, I'm the driver who gave you a ride the other week. And so we need to start talking and say, you know what, you only call me when you want to know where I am, but the location is clear on the app.
Yes.
But when you start to understand this ongoings, then you're able to stand up for yourself and say, stop stalking me. Because some of us, our number is so personal. It's your M-Pesa, it's your bank account, it's what you use to reset your OTP, your passwords, And so it's important to really begin. And one of the things that we are learning from the report is that ride-hailing apps should stop, for example, sharing my number. If I'm in Europe and I take an Uber, I can't see the Uber number's driver, their number. They can't see my phone number. But here, you can see my phone number, you can call me, and really there are no boundaries. And I think we need to start agitating and saying, don't share my number, you can see my location, call me on the app, so that we make the calls within the app.
Okay, and of course that is where the office then, comes in terms of then how do we strengthen this just to make sure that then this data is protected? Because then at the end of the day, I need the services, they might need my information, but again, to what extent, do they use this information and all those things? So we'll come back, to that after the break. Of course, the whole question about consent. Is it important? Is it not? Do I have to give consent for everything that is, required as far as my data is concerned or not? So many questions, as far as that is concerned. But all that is coming up after the break. Stay with us. This is Your World.
Septum Real Estate brings to you 265 Elma 1 Apartments, the newest and most stylish development in Kasarani. Pay a deposit of 200,000 Kenya shillings and the balance in flexible installments or mortgage finance.
With Glovo, you have anything you want from the city in your hands. Kama unatamani ugali beef ama fried chicken, order Glovo jaribu restaurant mpya. Tamu. Kama game inawaka na unataka drinks zaidi, order Glovo ushangilie timu yako. Na kama little one amemes na diaper zimeisha, order Glovo and save the day. With Glovo unaweza track order yako na kuongea na customer support, which is always available. Download the app and order anything you want from your city. We'll deliver.
Mipango yake lazima ikamilike. Asante Mungu. Asante Mungu. Asante Mungu.
To get Asante by King Kaka featuring Kidum, dial star 812 star 800 hash. Skiza, Na Nation.
Who am I? Why am I here? What will I be remembered for?
These questions come to a man at different stages of his life.
Early for some, late for others. Yet some men go through life groping for answers.
But fortunately for you, this doesn't have to be the case.
The second edition of Man Cave is an event
where you'll get to spend time with different men, learn from those who've gone ahead of you
on the journey that is a man's life. Take a trip to the Serene Lake House, Tigoni, and experience the perfect boys' getaway. Full of fun-filled games, cars, food, nyama choma, drinks, networking opportunities. 25th of February. Grab your tickets by going to www.kenyabars.com today. The Man Cave. It's a man's affair.
Cleaning.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're still with us. The show is Your World, and of course today it's all about data protection. Of course, understanding the value of data, in this case personal data or information, and how do we ensure that it is well protected. And of course, this is where Madam Kasait comes in, and of course in her office as well, just to make sure that in as much as, yes, sometimes in some instances we are required to give personal information, but then again, just ensure that this is not misused, right? Or used for commercial purposes, and especially when it comes to consent. But then again, the question that we're talking about, or again, a subject that we mentioned earlier in this, is as far as the rights of a data subject, and to what extent, do you know the rights that you have as far as giving out your data? So again, still, let's go back to the Data Protection Act of 2019. And what exactly does it say as far as the rights of a data subject? Well, It says a data subject has a right to A, be informed to the use of the use rather to which their personal data is to be put, right? And then to access their personal data in custody of data controller or data processor, and then to object to the processing of all or part of their personal data, and then to correction of false to correction of false or misleading data and to deletion of false or misleading data about them. And of course, that is what the, the rights of a data subject. But then again, Madam Kasai, so there's a bit of, terms here and there. We have the controller, and I think you mentioned it, the data controller and the processor as well. Of course, one would be like, okay, what is the difference, between, between these two people?
I like to make it very simple. Okay. We all like customer loyalty cards from shopping grocery shops. And you as a customer, when you are applying for that loyalty card, you are the data subject because it's your information. The information is about you, defines you, it defines your what you do. Okay. The grocery shop, which is collecting this information from you, they are the ones who then make a decision what to do with the information. Okay. However, that's what we call them data controller, because they're the ones collecting your information. But that grocery shop may not have the capacity. They might outsource that service to a third party. The third party who then helps them with what Walu was saying, data is a new oil, and therefore commercial. They are doing for them analysis. They're able to tell what the patterns are. They're able to tell what are the needs. And you will see in some of the loyalty apps, you will see they tell you, recently you bought for us this. You have this. These are the gaps that you have in you have not bought for us, and then they tell you about. So the person processing that data behind,
and all those
the discounts, the person processing for you to see that information could be outsourced by that. So that is the one we call data processor. Okay. Because they have then been given instructions by the data controller, do this on our behalf. Okay. But the responsibility of making sure the information is safe, it is as important to the data controller as the data processor. Yeah. And we need just to mention why data protection is so critical to us. One is a constitutional right. It's a constitutional right to right to privacy. Because nobody, think about it, because we like to clothe ourselves. And when you're in your house, why do we buy curtains? Why do we buy curtains? Otherwise, we don't leave our windows open. Because you don't want people knowing what you're doing within your home. Okay. That is what data protection and privacy is about. You want certain things about you to be kept secret. Your health information. You don't want people knowing what your health status is. Even at times, you don't want people to know your age. They might discriminate. They might say you're no longer a youth. You don't want to know your age. You don't want them to know who your children, what they do, and where they're coming from. So that's the importance. And we've seen globally serious data breaches which have happened and have affected tons and tons of people. Because their information got into the wrong. And just to demonstrate, imagine that simple app on shopping. They are influencing what you should buy. Yes. Because the only thing they are telling you is what is available in their shop. Try and extrapolate this to our conscious and our interest. Try and think, wow, that looks like. When data protection is about protecting my conscious and my thought process. When you give out information about you and what you were saying earlier, how you see in social media, visa, and you're wondering how come people
how do they know?
Basically,
I just
we are
thought about it once.
What you think. And in the end, you buy my product. So what does that take my conscious and my free will? So that, and on the flip side, it's discrimination. Try and imagine a child whose information got to the wrong hands. And then they were trolled on the internet. We've seen, maybe not as common in Kenya, but in other countries where children have committed suicide because of being trolled on the internet. Because somebody got the information out of, that's just one of the examples, it's not the only one. Information about them, and then he started trolling them, started challenging. So that's the importance. So coming back to now the rights of the data subject. One of the rights is you've asked about consent.
Can I say
consent?
No?
Many people talk about it. It's only one, and it's not the only one. Consent cannot make people not process your information. They could have other reasons, like a legitimate A bank may have a legitimate reason why they are processing your information because you're your customer.
Okay.
Because there could be a contract that we are entering into a contract. So consent is important, but for commercial purposes, it is your consent would be required.
For example, right? So I go somewhere. For example, maybe I need to get access into the building, and then on an MBA, you need to leave your ID.
Yes.
Can I say no? Say,
No,
just show you my ID, you look at my name, you write, because they write it down, right? They take your ID
Yes.
and then they write your name, and then they write the time that you got in and the person that you're going to see. So can I just show you my name, and then that's it? Do I have to, can I say no, like in such instances?
Unfortunately, that's not one of the issues you can refuse to give your ID. It's actually, you remember I said one of the reasons, lawful purpose.
Yes.
Under the Private Security Agency Regulations Act of 2016, it's a requirement.
Yeah.
And it is coming from a history
Okay.
of terrorism. We had, you remember, it came immediately, we had a terrorist act in Kenya.
Yeah.
There's a requirement that even hospital, people in hospitality industry collect your information.
True.
Yeah. It's a requirement that you actually identify. But because this issue has become of concern, as an office, what we are doing is to come up with a guidance note.
Okay.
We are, so that it's able to guide them, because even them, they are not clear.
That's
and it's
true.
important to, you see, I said earlier during the break, this is a complete mind shift. We are changing our culture of sharing. So that we protect ourselves.
Okay.
So when that industry may not understand what is required. So to help them understand, we are coming up with a guidance note so that we guide them.
Yeah.
But so that they don't collect too much information, like taking your biometrics. That's not required. That is not required, not your photo. They don't need, they just need to identify you, keep that information in safe custody.
Okay.
And also guide them in terms of what a privacy notice would look like.
Okay, all right. And the question about, limitation, as well. And again, there's also this other aspect. I think we mentioned it a little bit during the first part, and that is third party. And then we have brokers, as well. So then when it comes to dealing with such information, to what extent then should this happen, if at all it has to?
Okay, just to answer that question, I stick with the Immaculate example with the security sector, the guards. The guards by law have a right to collect your data.
All right.
But we as data subjects or as their guests shouldn't feel helpless that we have to give their data and we're done. No. Once we give their data, they are supposed to process it within certain parameters. I think 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, we had a situation where the political parties were registering people without their consent. If you think about where did those political parties get that data from? One of the suspect place is the buildings. You know, when you just go to the buildings, you'll get this black book that has thousands of people.
Yeah.
Get a picture, register you into a party you don't know about.
Yes.
So collecting data is one thing. How you handle it, how you protect it is another. So those security firms, as she says, they'll give guidelines on how they need to process our data so that it doesn't go into third-party hands. So in
or the
short,
brokers who make money out of
exactly, that's what I'm
right?
going at.
Yeah.
Those brokers, you and I can't handle them.
Yeah.
It is whoever collected our data, it is their responsibility to handle them, to manage them. And in the sector, we talk about a data processing agreement. You cannot share my data to third parties without some legally binding document that ensures that that party actually respects my data rights the same way you are.
You are, absolutely. All right, so then the question about storage. Legally, how long is one entity, organization, institution supposed to store my data for?
Okay. So the storage of data is governed by the law. So for example, your tax, data is, 7 to 12 years. And if you look at employment data, like if you've left your former employer, you can sue them, up to 5 years. And so most of them retain that data. If you look at universities, for example, your transcript, your academic details, they'll only keep your cut and your bad handwriting for a specific period of time. But if you read apps, for example, I think most of us, one of the things we don't do is to read the terms and conditions for apps.
No.
You just look for, I agree.
Yes, accept. It's
Yeah,
like
and companies have also figured out how to play with the cookies, like the cookies on the website, where you're trying to say only functional cookies, so you want the website to run, but then also there are marketing cookies, there are cookies to share with third parties. So some of us just say allow all,
Yes.
when you should ideally just go through and say, you know what,
see
it's just for
which one,
functionality, I don't want anything else. And so I think we need to read them. We have really excellent videos from the Lawyers Hub on YouTube, just reviewing the terms and conditions for different, especially social media platforms.
Okay.
And that's important because many people log in on other platforms using the social media. So it tells you, use your email or use your Facebook or Twitter, then we use our Twitter. And that automatically means that they use this to access that data. For example, digital lenders, many of them for a long time had used your social media data, because when you go in, it tells you, do you want to use Facebook? Do you want to give consent? Then you give consent to social media, and then they use your Instagram to judge whether you're traveling, you're broke, you're buying good food, and then they can say, okay, this is how much we'll give you. And so one of the things that you need to do as an individual is to really delink your other life, so that when you're on Facebook, this is your Facebook. When you're on Twitter, this is your Twitter. When you're on another platform, you're on a different platform. And also I think it's also important to just look at what apps are accessing. If they're asking you for permissions, for example, if you're using a calculator on your phone, it should not ask for your mic. Like, how do you need my voice for me to calculate 2 plus 2? And so you need to look at those apps and say, who have I given access to my microphone?
But I mean, sometimes there's some apps that when you do not give them, you know, that access, is like you can't. You can't
and that's the
use
problem,
that.
I think, still with our law, because if you look at
Yes.
GDPR in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulations, I can still use your platform even without consenting to your terms of use.
Okay.
You see, and so you'll go to this website and say, I refuse your cookies, and still be able to use that platform.
That's true.
So I think that we need to progress to that point, and also, you know, the Data Protection Act gave they said that they will develop commercial use of data at a later stage. I think that it's time that we go to that level where we're just not looking at personal data, but we also regulate commercial use of data. Because the most abusers of this is corporates, because data is good for them for customer acquisition, for retention. They also know us. There's this really famous story about a famous person in Kenya who ordered for food. I think they ordered for pizza, and the pizza was delivered in the wrong house. And he had 2 girlfriends, and so, but these people knew his location, and simply they would just be like, deliver here. If you look at, you know, this platform, they're like, deliver here. It's automatic. And so just by that, they know who's in a relationship.
I am so stuck there.
If it's a Friday and you're trying to order, and you can try this, if it's a Friday and you're trying to order an app, a ride-hailing taxi, you can see they will suggest to you places to go. And if you want to know if somebody's playing you on Valentine's, you simply just look at where do they go on Friday at 5 p.m. because the app already knows. And so when you talk about deletion and retention of data, you must take the step. And once in a while go in and say, delete my data. The same way you delete photos from your phone, delete the data, try another platform. If you're getting a taxi from home, you know, try and get away from your house. Walk a few steps so that somebody doesn't know your exact location. Because somebody gave me a ride, and I was getting off from Sarit Center. And I told him, I'll M-Pesa you now. And I said, you're not concerned? He's like, I'm not concerned. I picked you from your house. People I pick in the morning will pay me. I am like, okay. For that reason, there are places where I will pick and taxi from, you know. And so I think that we need to take those deliberate steps to ensure that we are not sharing everything. And your location on your phone needs to be off. When you're not using it, why is your location on the app? And we see this a lot with people. So take those steps as an individual to ensure that we can't just trace you when we want to, because people are smart. People like Walua, security experts.
I mean, listen, they can,
just jump onto the storage retention thing. In Europe, they talk about the right to be forgotten. At some point when I get off your app, I have a right to be forgotten. And the pressure from Europe is such that even today, social media platforms give you as a data subject or as an individual the tools to go in and see what data this social media app knows about you. And what data you want to delete, so that they do not know about you. So it's important that Wanjiku or the data subjects begin exercising this right. Because they're provided for
Absolutely. Read. Just read the Data Protection Act and get all this info, right?
Yes,
just
and
read
exercise
and
it.
ask questions, right? If you have to, and all those things. So then, Madam Kasait, so your office,
Yes.
right? Data protection, just to make sure that all this valuable, like
Yes.
oil, data is protected. How do you come in? Of course, there's some things that we can do as individuals, as a people, just to make sure that we protect whatever information that we've given. But then how do you come in?
Yeah, just to jump in before I say how we come in.
Yeah.
Just to jump in, I think the reason we are here this morning is part of that awareness.
Yes.
That
It's important.
this act has been with us for 3 years. The office has been here for 2 years.
Yeah.
There has been enough lead time. Now it's time to really push the information out there in terms of the rights of data subject. That way, then the data subject will start exercising their rights.
Yeah.
Because it's a whole. In fact, you get very worried when you live with a house with grown-ups and children. It means your footprints of your location and what you do are everywhere. And when you think about it, what does that mean in terms of anyway? What do we do as an office? We have a mandate as an office. One of the mandates is what I'm talking about, awareness creation. And moving forward, you'll see a lot more. And I say this is space that cannot be left to the Office of the Data Commissioner in terms of awareness. We've partnered with Lawyers Hub in terms of webinars. We've partnered with KitaNet in terms of awareness, just to create awareness there, because it's a lot. It's a lot, and people need to be told. Two is we have a responsibility to conduct audits and inspection through our own initiative, for instance, on those websites, in terms of realizing there is a gap, to be able to do an inspection and say you need to deal with this A, B, C, and D. Three is, of course, investigation. We have the power to investigate, and we have actually been able to investigate some cases when the data subject complain to us online. They come and file a complaint to the office and say, this has happened to me, this my access of my information is incorrect, or there was a breach on my information. That is there.
And then find some of them.
Yes, we also find some of them. And because we also know, because we also have to, the balance of, we are not here as an office to kill innovation. The balance is, we realize that there is a gap, that we are in a culture of sharing. And even the data controllers may not know. So what we've done, and in the case of the political party issue that came up, we developed a guidance note. A guidance note helps that industry to realize they are not doing the right thing, and this is the way to do. So we issue guidance notes, we issue advisory, and a good advisory I'd like to talk about is one for the expressway. When they started, there was a lot of information being collected. If you go there today, they are collecting much less information. We advise, because that's where we are here as an office to also advise. But the core of our work is the rights of the data subject, and I think that is why last week, on Saturday, on Friday, the whole of last week, and of course the Data Privacy Day celebration, is to really bring that awareness around the globe on what it means, because we are in an era where we all share our information. We are in an era where sharing our information means convenience, which means it means innovation. That when a research company is doing research about health data, which they expected to encrypt it, by the way, or use said anonymization. When they encrypt, they're able to tell, using artificial intelligence, what is a better solution. So you see, even as we innovate, we must be ethical about it. We must also always have centrality, the importance of protecting a data subject. Because if we don't protect them, then discrimination is an issue that could come up. Identity theft is an issue that could come up. And really, at the end of the day, you don't feel secure.
Absolutely. And again, we cannot wish away innovation. We cannot wish away technology. We embrace it, but also at the same time make sure that we're safe at that. And of course, Walubengo, then what is it that we can learn from Europe? How do we employ whatever has worked there? Here in the country, because we're talking about how boundaries, we don't know that much here in the countries. I need your information, and I need your information. I don't have to explain to you, and yet you should actually explain to me why you need my information, right? So then how do we, what is it that we can borrow from Europe and make sure that it also works here in the country?
I think Immaculate mentioned something about Europe that made them very sensitive about data, the
Yeah.
Holocaust. I mean, whatever happened at that time
Yeah.
made them realize that the privacy, for example, location, where I live is so private and it can be abused. People can come and finish you, as we say in Kenya,
Yeah.
based on the data
Yeah.
of your residency.
Yeah.
And the culture of keeping things very minimal, giving you only what you need to do your job, is almost inbuilt. Unlike the African culture where we tend to share more than enough.
Yeah.
So the laws we have here are pretty much similar like what the Europeans have, but our culture is the one that we need to work on.
Okay.
As Wanjiku, we need to realize that the law protects us. It is us who are not waking up to the task of exercising our rights.
Okay.
The right to be forgotten, the right to consent, the right to data minimization. You, for example, can go online and sign up for a mobile loan. There are many mobile loan providers.
Yes, the apps, yes.
Behind the scene, they're harvesting your family, you know, photos, your address book. They're harvesting more than they need to give you a loan. And in most cases, you may not be aware.
Yeah. Or
But-
sometimes you're desperate. You need this money. So it's like,
Sometimes,
whatever you
you've
want,
just said yes,
take.
yes, yes. You see, so
Yeah.
you need to reach a point where you say, no, the law says what you're doing is
It's
illegal.
wrong.
And
Yeah.
then file a complaint with her office.
Okay.
And then her office will rein in these people.
Okay.
So it is, it's a maturing process. And I'm happy over the last 2 years, it seemed to have picked up
Yeah.
pace. Who
There's a bit
knows?
of progress.
Probably
Yeah.
by next
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
we'll begin to have the same practices that we see.
Absolutely, yeah, and have like different conversations. We literally have to end the conversation, but of course, I'm just going to give you very few, like a minute, Linda, in terms of the law, and of course, it is there to protect us and even protect, let's just say everybody else. But then again, what are some, gaps here and there that probably you have seen that needs to be worked on as well?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this on commercial use of data, but then also we need to really strengthen the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner by allocating a lot of money to that office because it needs a lot of resources. Because we've seen from other African countries that this is, you need money. And from the African Union policy framework as well, one of the implementation steps is to give more resources to the data protection officers. And then two, I think companies need to think about liability because sometimes we think that people are just talking and being empowered. But on the other hand, corporates need to think about liability because if a guard thinks he can just take your data, the company is liable. He's acting on behalf of the company. And so they need to take steps in terms of training and look at ways in which they can avoid data breaches because these data breaches happen. So what are the security features you're doing? And this is possible if you do a data protection impact assessment, which needs to be filed with the Data Protection Commissioner. So I think that corporates need to take those steps on training and then also to look at ways in which they can also buy security products that will help them to protect their consumers. At the Lawyers Hub, we conduct trainings on the same, and there's also training, I think, at the Kenya School of Government together with the Data Commissioner. It's important that corporates invest in training their employees on data protection.
All right, and of course, Madam Kasait, just, lock everything out. What is it, that one or two or three things, very quickly, that Kenyans need to walk away with from this conversation today?
One of the things is that we are here to protect the right for the data subject. Our office is open. You are welcome to file with us any complaint. Two is the call to the data controllers and data processor. It's important to embrace data by design and data protection by design and by default.
All right.
Put the centrality of your data subject. And then finally, the issue around data protection will require a concerted effort across board. And it does not apply only to private sector, it also applies to public sector.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Really, such an insightful conversation. I have learned a lot. Those group of people who choose to leave their location on all the time. Yeah, you have been one. But most importantly, you need to know your rights as far as, the information that you're given. This is the whole question about transparency, which should, actually come into play. But at the same time, know that you can actually file a complaint in the event that you feel, your privacy has been abused and all those things. So certainly, sana, for coming by today. Madam Immaculate Kasait, Data Commissioner Linda Bonyo, CEO, Lawyers Hub, rather, and of course, John Walubengo, ICT lecturer, Multimedia University. Thank you so much. much for coming by today. Please come back again so that we can have more conversations on the same. But we have to end the conversation now. My name is Winnie Lumbembe. Have yourselves a lovely day ahead. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe and please read, okay? Please read. Goodbye for now.
You're throwing money down the drain.
How?
On these cleaning products.
Impossible.
Harpic 10X. While other cleaners flow away, Harpic 10X's viscous formula in only one round of application gives you sparkling, clean toilet. Harpic, 10 times better cleaning than other cleaning products.
And great.
Your biashara by accessing loans, investment options, convenient banking, network opportunities, and so much more. Njoo tukujenge. Visit any one of our 93 branches countrywide. Family Bank is regulated by the Central Bank of Kenya.
Now this is what we call convergence. Come through for the morning fix this and every single Friday right here on MTV. Yes, it's about that time.